launch, and it is Chloe. So I shall hand over to Chloe to describe what the Bury the Giant Club is and to get us all in the mood for being creative and loving mosses.
I'm so excited, Naomi. This is our first launch day, and it is the week before our 5th anniversary of being Art and Energy. So I thought I would just give a bit of context for why we've made this online platform, Bury the Giant Club. Now, actually, I'm also just going to try and remove your spotlight, Naomi, so that I can, because I sort of want to be the centre of attention. So how do I, there I am, the centre of attention now, love it. So why have we got a Bury the Giant Club? So last year, we ran a big old project, which I think lots of you were involved in. It was called Moths to a Flame. And we were making a mass participation artwork inspired by moths to take up to COP26 with us, to call for action on climate change and show that lots of people care about taking action. And what we realized was that a lot of people really do want to see change, and they wanted to feel hands-on, and they wanted to get involved. So all of those 58,000 participants, we realized might want to continue the journey themselves and with us. So we've spent the last year trying to design a project that would allow people to join in and be creative for a brighter, greener future. So if anyone didn't come across the Moths to a Flame project, here's a copy of the book, which is available on the Art and Energy website. We've only got about 20 left, so snap one up if you do want a copy of that. And now I'm going to ask Kat to share our video. Now, I just want to, before we do share this video, I just want to give you a bit of a warning that we've been trying quite hard to share this video via Zoom for quite a lot of the day, and it has been a bit glitchy and the sound has been a bit funny. So apologies if it doesn't come through clearly to you. We will share a link in the website, and it's not too long, but hopefully it'll work well enough for you to get a sense of what the club is. So over to you, Kat.
No, sorry, I'm just trying something different because it's doing its thing again. Here we go, try again.
Hello, and welcome to Bury the Giant Club. I'm Chloe from the Art and Energy Collective. We're a group of artists, makers, thinkers and tinkerers, all using our skills to create a brighter, greener future. And we've been inspired by moss to create this new mass participation art project called How to Bury the Giant. Now, the climate emergency is overwhelming. It's the giant of our times. And to bury the giant, we need to act more like mosses and harness our creativity. This year, we hope you will join us and develop your own work of art, music, poetry, writing, cooking, growing. You can choose whatever way you want to be creative that appeals to you. And by the end of the year, we hope that you will contribute one of your pieces to an exhibition and a book to raise funds to reduce carbon emissions and support people who are in fuel poverty. And we'll share the details here. This Mega Mossy Challenge welcomes anyone anywhere to join in and have some arty fun. Every month, you can join us online and we'll explore the fascinating miniature world of mosses to find inspiration and ideas for your creative journey. There will be simple activity sheets, prompts, and fun creative challenges that you can do on your own or with your group. You'll meet other artists and makers, moss and ecology experts, climate scientists, people exploring the tiny creatures that live in moss and the way that the mosses support all of life. We'll hear from people with carbon and moss stories, from the moors and the woodlands, and even from the pavement outside your door. And we'll find out what sort of mossy magic is happening near you. We hope you'll share your ideas and suggestions as we go, so that we can all learn from each other and be inspired. We know that everyone is creative in their own way, and we all have something unique to offer. And although each of us is small, like mosses, we can make a big difference for our planet. So, now that you're here, have a look around the site and let us know what you think.
I don't know about you, but I sort of feel like it's a form of art, just watching the out of syncness of the image and the voice. But anyway, I hope the message came across. We're hoping you're all going to get involved in whatever way you like to be creative. And to that end, I wonder if you might be willing to share in the chat the sorts of ways that you like to get creative. Is it that you like being out in the garden? Is it that you like colouring in or cooking, or I don't know, it could be whatever you imagine, and probably more off the wall than I can imagine. And while you're sharing in the chat, I'm going to take a moment to show you what I've been doing over the last few weeks, because I've had a head start and I've already been inspired by moss a bit. So I'm going to turn on my iPhone. I've got it here, so linked up. So hopefully we'll be able to jump straight in so I can show you some close-ups, because that would be good. Right, okay, here we go. Oh, is this going to work? Here we go. Oh, look, you can see my desk, my stationery. Right, okay, so this is a terrarium. And I think that the moss inside it is some kind of polytrichum. This is what I call a lost moss. So a lost moss is something that's been kicked off the side, or it's fallen off a roof, or it's something that isn't already happily in situ. And I've taken it home and seen whether or not I can grow it and keep it alive. So this is where I started with giving a home to some lost mosses. And I was thinking about the glass around the outside of the moss and getting quite excited, because I do illustration. I was getting quite excited about what you can do with combining illustration with living things. So here is my first attempt at creating an etched glass terrarium. And I hope you can see here that we've got some pylons, and we've got some birds flying over what I think looks like a rewilded landscape. So obviously it just invites you to look a little bit closer at the moss and see those as a kind of bigger than they look normally. I'm also quite interested in how, when you do etching a vessel, you get this really interesting interplay between the foreground and the background. So the piece changes as you go round. And I don't know whether you can see, my boys were going on about Ragnarok, so I thought I'd have a bit of a wolfishness under the ground and a kind of sun-like image above. Trying to kind of get a bit of that industrial thing going along with the mythical thing. So etching is quite an easy way of making work, and I have got quite excited about it, really. You can blame Jenny. She was the person who introduced me to etching in the first place, and I want to show you over here another piece that I'm going to make. So this was £3 in the charity shop. Fortunately, there's always glass vases in charity shops, it seems. So what I've done is I've covered it with this mask. I'm quite interested in exploring whether or not I can use wax to create a mask instead, because obviously sticky black plastic, although it's been reclaimed from the scrap store, it's still not very nice. So the next stage is to do a drawing over here, and I think I'm going to try and draw some people, and then cut out the space, and where you get a cutout, you can put on this thing called armor etch, and over the course of about 15 minutes, the bit which is clear here then becomes kind of greyed out. So that's quite a satisfying way of being able to make images relatively quickly. And so yes, that is my current obsession. Now, Naomi, I wonder, what are other people getting obsessed about? What sort of creative things have people been doing?
We've got printmakers and people who like doing cyanotypes and gardening. We've got somebody who's obsessed with picking up stones from beach to make jewelry with, but it's just becoming a lovely big collection of stones. So yeah, there's quite a wide variety of creative thoughts and imaginations here. Oh, there's poetry and tap dancing, Chloe. And actually, shall we go straight to Giovanna next?
We should, but I want to ask quickly, all of those people who've written a thing, it would be so exciting to see how you, with your creativity, interpret this Moss challenge. I think I'm really looking forward to seeing how you guys find your inspiration on this mossy journey. So yes, let's do Giovanna. I'd love to see what Giovanna's up to.
Giovanna, because also we know, Giovanna, that you're about to go to your tap dancing class, and you want your slot now, and then we're going to go to the badge making elsewhere that's happening and going on in Dartmoor and in Plymouth. So how are you, Giovanna? So I know you're now an award. Giovanna is from the South East London Community Energy Group, and you're award winning, aren't you? You're also, we can't hear you.
Not hear me?
Now we can.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. How long have we been using this technology? How many times can I mess up with it? Yeah, no, we did win some awards at the Community Energy Awards, very graciously. Somebody nominated us, I'm not quite sure who. Yeah, so I think my role here is really to talk about the work at CELSI, what we're doing, and really in some ways to talk about, I know that that the end point of this project is about fuel poverty, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah,
so I'm going to share some slides, if that's okay.
yeah.
Okay, can you? So my name is Giovanna Speciale. I am I'm one of the founder members and CEO of South East London Community Energy. We're a group of people based in South East London, which is an area of huge inequalities. We have areas of relative affluence. This trust lives quite near me. Alongside absolute deprivation, some of the most deprived areas in the country. And what we are trying to do is enable South East London to become fit for the future, to transform our energy system into one that's distributed and renewable, where we reduce the amount of energy we need to enable a system, to enable a new kind of system that leaves no one behind. So a lot of our work is really about energy justice. We're a co-op. We try, and the innovation that we do is really technical. It's always social. It's always about enabling people to realize their dreams, to realize their projects, to participate in the change from a system that is hugely unequal and is going to lead to a 4-degree world, to one where we work together to create something really quite different. We're a co-op. We raise community share capital to finance a lot of our things. We bring tenacity, knowledge, local networks, and a whole heap of love to what we do. In many ways, somebody asked me to summarize what we do the other day, and I said, well, what we do is we push open doors. We wait to see if there's anything we can do to transform our energy system. We watch the policy landscape, and should there be a crack in the door, we're going to rush through it. We own and operate Community Finance Solar, along with lots of other community energy groups across the country. We also do the same. We enable buildings to retrofit their lighting, huge carbon emission reductions, huge cost reductions. We work with businesses to help them, small businesses, help them understand how they can reduce their costs and carbon. We work with some of our wealthier households to help them plan a retrofit of their home so they can reduce their costs and carbon. But a lot of our work, at least I would say half of our work, is all about energy justice, is all about enabling people to be able to affordably heat their homes and meet their energy needs. And as you all know, prices have skyrocketed and so many people are struggling. Many of the people that are struggling are not the people you would consider to be vulnerable. Many of the people are working. They're often paid on minimum wage. They're often private renters. They're often feeling really powerless. So because this is because the focus of this is art, I thought I would end with a poem that is about fuel poverty. It was rather dashed off. But hey, we're here to celebrate art and using art to talk about energy and to talk about our natural environment. So I haven't moss doesn't feature in this poem, but mold does. I don't know if that counts.
Yeah, mold. I think mold counts because it's very, very tiny. It's very tiny. It begins with M, Giovanna.
Hey, brilliant. Well, that'll do.
Yes.
Poem's called This Morning. This morning, my lonely feet felt like clouds adrift, cold, broken by a mess of blue veins, with small islands of red chilblains. Your call is important, said the voice. For an hour, I counted the black patches of mould on walls to a plinky plonk tune, my ceiling marked by continents of mould. Then we danced the debtor's dance. I agreed to repay more money than I have. I know that they see through me. I want to disappear. I don't dare turn on the heating. I hug my knees to my chest, my breath a fog of resignation. I watch my limbs fade to transparent. Without much expectation, I called the number on the leaflet. She talked of things to which I was entitled, of grants, discounts, and debt relief. She said that I had rights and they had duties. This morning, for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. I felt the ground beneath my feet.
I think I'm clapping on behalf of everyone, Giovanna. I love your poems. And can I just say, anyone who wants to read more of Giovanna's poems, there's some in the book. That's just lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank you as well for coming along, but also just to show how this morning or this afternoon when we had our first launch, there was a very strong sense that everything is interconnected. So although you talked about molds, and although we're next going to talk about the mosses on Dartmoor, that sort of environment holding and protecting against climate change has an impact all the way and around on people in cities as well. So thank you. Thanks, Giovanna, and keep being creative in response to it all, including the tap dancing.
Okay, well, many thanks for your time. It's been a real pleasure being here.
Okay, thanks. And on that note, we will just see other people being creative before we go to Paul. Jenny, there's one or two others making, aren't there?
There are. So I spent this afternoon, I spent a couple of lovely hours in Plymouth Scrap Store, with a small group of people, and we were making these badges. So you can order your badge kit from the Art and Energy shop, and you can order kits with these, and then it's a really lovely activity to do with people. I'm halfway through making another one here. They are slightly addictive. I've been using a lot of wool on mine, but you can also use beads and buttons, and somebody this afternoon actually incorporated a burst balloon that she found in the scrap store, and so there was some broken jewelry and all sorts of bits and pieces, and we've also sent a kit to Naomi Oakley, who's going to speak in a minute. So if, when you're looking at the people who are in the room, as it were, and you kind of see the top of our heads, it's because we're sitting here listening and doing, because we're makers. And one of the beauties of, I think, of these badges is that each one will be unique and made with the objects that we're surrounded by and using the resources that we have access to, which is very much the nature of this club, in terms of a whole range of people, all with different ideas and solutions and ways forward with the climate emergency and reducing energy use, and yes, it's very exciting, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. And all those badges made with the thought of, well, I suppose not everybody's thinking about moss, but many of them are mossy, aren't they? But my one is a bit out of screen, but mine is very mossy. It's sort of just like a green hairy head, Bury the Giant. But moving on to mosses, somebody in our chat has asked, well, how close is mold related to moss? I'm not quite sure. I don't know whether. I do know that moss, it came out of the sea and started being moss on land, on the barren land, about 450 million years ago. But I need to look up a bit more about mold. But I think they're a bit connected, and maybe Paul will be able to tell us. So our next presentation is going to talk about, Paul is going to talk about the magic of mosses and give us a quick overview of how they have come to be, or what they are and what they're doing out on the landscape, and particularly in peatlands with the sphagnum moss. So hello, Paul, thank you for coming and being part of our launch at the Bury the Giant Club.
Hi Naomi, thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here. And it's really all of this creativity, it's getting me thinking about doing things as well. Well, to answer that question, which is a good question, I actually have a little bit of a passion for fungi as well as mosses, because it's something I've been interested in. In fact, my kind of PhD was on mycology, but they are in a different kingdom than the plants, so they are not related. But from the viewpoint of renewal, they are really related, because both mosses and the fungi, of course, are involved in that whole process of decomposition and renewal and rebirth. So from that point of view, they're equally fascinating. And I've personally always been interested in the slightly more obscure groups. So it was really nice to get an invitation to come here and talk about the research. So mosses, they're incredibly amazing. I'm going to share some slides and hopefully some pretty pictures with you of some of the mosses that I've been working on. So I'm hoping that you can see this very vibrant sphagnum there on screen. So sphagnum moss, which I'm going to be talking about today. But I just want to talk and give a little bit of an overview of mosses in their entirety, because they are amazing little plants, and they're able to modify their environment, particularly the local atmosphere, which is something that we can learn from. Unlike the seed-bearing plants, the higher plants which have got vascular tissue and roots that modify soils, what mosses do really well is they modify the environment. So they're able to increase the levels of humidity locally in the forest systems and where many of them occur, scavenging for nutrients, so cleaning water, and also producing kind of acidity on the outsides of their leaves, which means that they tend to decompose slower than other plants. So a lot of my work's actually been done on peatlands, but I'm just starting to work with some of my students, PhD students, just starting on our temperate rainforest. So this is a slide here of Wistman's Wood, which is one of the highest elevation woodlands in the UK, and it's a remnant of our what would have been extensive rainforest going all the way down the west coast of Britain. And this is a particular example where it's festooned with mosses and liverworts and lichens. We've got about 750 species in the UK, and down here in the southwest, it's particularly diverse, and you can see them growing over the surface of these boulders and over the surface of the branches. And they really do modify the local environment, increasing the humidity and purifying the air in those areas. So really quite beautiful. But what I'm going to go on and talk to you about today is much more about the sphagnum mosses, the 36 species of sphagnum, and they are the engineers of peatland growth. They are a perfect example of species that are able to modify their environment, like this Sphagnum denticulatum that's growing in this pool here. So the sphagnums are responsible for producing peat, and peat contains a lot of carbon, and carbon from the atmosphere. So in actual fact, our peatlands, which only occur over about 3% of the globe, hold more carbon than all of our rainforests over planet Earth. And who builds these, or what builds them? Well, sphagnum mosses, particularly in the northern hemisphere and more temperate and boreal areas, build up these deep layers of peat, which can be tens of meters deep. So anywhere where the plant growth is quicker than the rate of decomposition, then you get a buildup of the peat. And that can be quite slow, but quite significant in terms of removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So, but unfortunately, our peatlands are not in a very good condition because we have drained them extensively in the lowlands for producing food, and in the uplands in particular for wide scale pasture. So this is a site that we've been working up on Dartmoor, which is Tavy Head, and you just see in the middle of the image there a digger just about doing some restoration work. So in order to restore the growth of the sphagnums over the surface layer, we need to get the water up to the surface. So by blocking the channels, the drainage channels that have occurred in the peat following drainage and burning in many cases, we can elevate the water tables. And this is something that's being done as part of the Headwaters project on Dartmoor, with Dartmoor National Park, funded by South West Water. And you can see some of the pools being created there. This particular site, we created over 200 or so pools, and my students were involved in evaluating and monitoring the rate of colonization of sphagnum in these pools. So there's a pool 38, number 38 out of our 70 in 2015, and then again in 2016. And one of the real surprising things about, in this case, this aquatic sphagnum growing in the pool, is that it colonizes really rapidly. In fact, of those 70 pools, within 2 years of growth, 90% of the pools that were created had sphagnum in, and quite high levels of cover as well. So you can see the change here from 2015. And as time goes on, those pools became deeper as well, as the sphagnum started to slow the flow, which is something which is very topical at the moment, of course, with us trying to reduce flooding issues further downstream. One of the things I should say is quite interesting is, so that's the kind of sphagnum mosses that grow in the pools. One of the things we're really interested in is this process of paludification, where the sphagnums grow over the surface of the peat and start to turn it from what is a source of carbon to the atmosphere to a sink. And here's two very pretty mosses that grow either in lawns or Sphagnum capifolium, or in tussocks over the surface of the moor. And these take a little bit longer to come back in. But I know that you're, as a group, are involved in some recolonization projects on the moor, so it'd be great to get involved and see how they're doing. So I want to just kind of talk now about kind of carbon sequestration, and take you to another site on Dartmoor just to finish off on, which is Fox Tor Mire, which is 58 hectares in size, and it's a lowland valley mire, so water flows in from the surrounding kind of catchment into this area that's shown in red here. And we've been working on this. This is a site which is in reasonably good condition. We've been working on it, or my research group have, since well over the last kind of 10 or so years. And we've been doing looking at carbon exchange. In particular, we've been looking at getting basically all of the stocks and stores of carbon for this particular peatland to work out how much carbon it's sequestering each year. So what you can see in the slides there are some chambers where we've been looking at release of methane and uptake of CO2 by the growing sphagnum mosses in these chambers. And that's enabled us to do a calculation of how much carbon has been taken out of the atmosphere in the form of CO2 each year per hectare for this site. And it's really quite surprising, actually, just how much is taken out. So for this particular site, and this is just looking at Foxtor Mire from above and looking at those areas of active peat, which is shown in the green. And on average, even with the methane that's released and some of the carbon which is released in the streams that flow out of Foxtor Mire, so that gives you your kind of darker colour that you see in rivers, particularly in the autumn months, which is the peat product that's broken down. But still, with these outputs, we still get nearly 10 tonnes of CO2 fixed per hectare per year. So that is the kind of more than the average person would produce in their kind of, or released as part of their kind of activities, food requirements, transport on a yearly basis. So quite significant. And of course, this happens year on year on year, and providing the peat stays wet, that carbon will stay in the ground. So I just wanted to kind of leave it there, really. Give you an introduction to these amazing species, these sphagnum, and even though they're small, they make a big difference to our atmosphere, and indeed are one of the many solutions that we have for climate change going forward. So really very important. And if you are interested in finding out a little bit more, you can go onto the university site, and there's a very good little video that we've produced, basically cartoon video showing the uptake of carbon from the atmosphere and just how much is stored within these peat bodies. Quite happy to take questions if you've got any. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing now.
Thanks, Paul. That was brilliant. I love the mixture of the beauty of the mosses and that science and the actual extent to which the carbon is being sequestered. You know, so I don't know whether have we got a question here. There's somebody says I stumbled across this morning. GeoRespire. Have you heard of that, Paul? Geo is a website.
No, I haven't. That's new to me. No, it's good. Yeah, I can see on the chat now. Yeah.
And Jenny's asked, what was the term for spreading mosses again?
Oh, it's paludiculture. It's a term that's used more generally for wet agriculture. So you can also use it for growing rice and things like that. So any plant that's grown in water. So paludification is the kind of spread of the living sphagnum layer over what is the peat body.
That's
Would you be able to pop that in the chat, please, Paul? We've got a few people who are wordsmiths, so they might come up with something beautiful attached to that too.
Yeah, Giovanna might make a poem from. Is lichen a type of moss? That's another question you've got.
No, it's not. It is a lichen is a symbiotic association between algae and fungi, basically an algal sandwich. So you've got a layer of fungus, algae in the middle, and a fungus. So it's a beautiful kind of mutualistic relationship between two totally different groups of plants, which has evolved many times in evolution.
Yeah, and we've got masses to learn from them as well, haven't we, in the way that they've become one, but they're different species within the same compartment. What, the sandwich you were saying? So yeah, thank you very much, Paul. We will hopefully have you back at some point over the coming year on on another broadcast like this, but also we're ourselves growing small amounts of sphagnum with local communities and schools, one big experiment, but specific to places, and then trying to do a bit of this paludification and planting back and seeing whether communities at community scale can make a difference to some sites. And Paul is going to help do research on that with us, see whether we can all creatively get involved in the restoration of a place and make a difference that way. So thanks, Paul. And we are moving on to Dartmoor, to someone who enjoys doing the restoration and conservation and farming and living on the moor and the wetlands and the peatlands, and also making badges. Naomi Oakley here, up on a farm called Challicum in Dartmoor.
Hi,
Hello.
thank
And
you for inviting me.
Oh, it's really nice to see you. And I''ve noticed your head down, and I think you are busy making. How have you got on with? Oh wow!
I've had the most fun. I have made a bag. Tell me when I'm focused. How
There we
about
are.
that?
Yeah, lovely.
I've basically made my wetland in badge form. So to me, this is my amazing pasture that is part of our farm and is really, really important. And what's really lovely to me is the colours and the textures and how special that looks in the landscape compared to bright green fertilised fields, because you have these you get this kind of texture that's basically yellowy green, which is beautifully done by this rapier, whoever chose that. And then you've got these little shorter areas of bright green where little flowers can come through. And as a farmer, it's really important. Cattle are a really good way of making these pastures, which they're called rose pastures, which is a Welsh word for red, because they do look reddy gold in the autumn. And cattle are really important for opening up those wet pastures and creating opportunities for these little mosses and little sensitive flowers to start to grow. And then they support fantastic array of insects that then feed the birds. And we get these amazing marsh fritillary butterflies that are incredibly rare and special to our peatlands. And the marsh fritillary butterfly looks like what's basically a flying stained glass window, this tiny little beautiful delicate orange and brown butterfly. And when the light catches it, you just get, it's just the prettiest thing. And you see them flying on Dartmoor on certain sites from June to the end of August. And I'd say if you're ever around on Dartmoor, do come and have a look, because they're a joy. And you also get to see all the plants that go with that species as well.
Yeah, that's absolutely lovely. And we have all come and visited the farm, and it is, I mean, there are footpaths across it, and you actually actively welcome groups, don't you, to your
We do.
farm to enjoy the regeneration that you're achieving on your landscape, Naomi. So and I really like the way your badge matches that
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. And the thing about it is I find it quite mindful doing it, because it makes me think about the scale and the size and the colour. Because the beautiful thing about these peatlands is they change in texture and colour through the year. So they start off with the white of the bog bean, which is it's a terrible name for an incredibly beautiful little plant that looks almost like an orchid. And then you get orchids, you get heath spotted orchids and common orchids, which aren't very common anymore because they're very special. And then you go into the yellows of the bog asphodel, and then the blue of the devil's bit scabious, which is this amazing blue daisy that waves across the top of the peatland and is the food plant of the marsh fritillary butterfly. And it just, it's this ever-changing colour and texture. But as a farmer, it's really important to me to have these peatlands, because they, especially with climate change, they give me somewhere wet where my animals can go to drink. They're somewhere cool where they can go when it's a really hot day, but they're also well sheltered. So the animals can get in and amongst the tree, because our Rose Pasture has trees on as well as the bog itself. And so you've got shade and shelter for our animals, but also for wildlife. And it's lovely for people as well to go and sit under a tree and watch the world go by. And it provides a constant source of really good quality clean water. And there's always a lovely thing for animals to eat there. So it must be like eating a lovely bag of mixed salad. It's lots of different delicious things for them to try. And that's really important because animals don't like to, it would be like us eating iceberg lettuce all the time if all we ate was really heavily fertilized grass. It's part of our organic system. It works really well and fits in as a great part of our farm.
Yeah, well, we love visiting it, but also we're going to work with you and some other farms across Dartmoor in engaging the local communities with those peatlands. And I remember you took us to a site where you'd just scraped back the surface to encourage the wet and the water and the drains to hold more water in it. And you'd only done it maybe the previous year. And when we were there, we saw some jack snipe that were already on the water. And it's in those bare areas where there's still a bit bare, where we might plant back a little bit of sphagnum that we've taken from the same site and just encourage that to hold firmer and develop it. But mostly it's also about doing that, connecting with nature and with place, which I think is really important in understanding our energy systems. What do you reckon?
Well, I think that, you know, that was a very dry, very boring bit of grass.
Yeah.
And we were able to scrape the grass off the top and expose the peat underneath, and that got wetter. And by having people come along and help us and engage and getting them to plant some sphagnum, that would be really exciting. You know, that's a lovely thing for us to invite people onto the farm and for them to see that not all farmers are the same. You know, we're tenants. We don't own our land. And people say, oh, well, if you're only a tenant, you don't care. Well, we care deeply and passionately about our farms in the same way that people feel passionately about their little space, no matter how big it is. But we also feel that just because we rent this land, it's everybody's land. Everybody should be able to come here, enjoy it, share it. They shouldn't have to pay. And we welcome anybody who wants to come here. You don't have to do something. All we ask is that you leave it in the same state that you find it in, and you treat it with respect. And then I think that's how we get people to care about the land and nature and climate. We all have to do our bit. And we're so lucky to have a farm. It's amazing. It's a gift. And we just think that, you know, anybody who wants to come, we so welcome them.
Thank you. That's brilliant, Emmy. And thanks for being part of our launch and for your creation. And we'll be reporting back as we go forward with this on how we're doing with engaging the local communities. I've got meetings up in Morton Hampstead and Princetown in the next week or so to get those local schools out on Dartmoor and helping to restore these mylands. So we shall let everybody know that that's all being funded by the Devon Environment Foundation as well as the Commoners Foundation too. So when I think we're getting towards the end, but we haven't actually had a good old look on the club site itself. So I think now is the time for Kat and Chloe to just show everybody how to share their creative thoughts and get groups together to do a bit more.
So I want to say that I think it's really important for people to know when they come into the club that this is just the beginning. So this is a whole big experiment to see what's going to work and how it's going to work and how people enjoy things. So please don't feel when you arrive that this is how it's going to be forever. Please do see it as a space where you can shape what is there and how it's there and what works for you and what you need. And please do feel free to connect with people. Kat, do you want to show people where stuff is?
Yep, so this is, let me close that one away. This is the club, and to access it, you need a login, and I'll put a link in the chat in a minute. It's hosted by the Mighty Networks platform. It's free to join, and you can have as many sort of notifications as you like. You can switch them off, or you can get a notification for everything, so you can engage at the level that you want to. And a bit like other social media platforms, there's a feed, so you can see all the latest posts. Best place to start is to start with the welcome page. And that tells you a bit more about the club. You'll see the video that we shared earlier with Chloe speaking, and there's more films to be added. So you can find out a little bit more about the club here, and also give your input in how to develop the club and ways in which you think you'd like the club to move forward. And we've also got a section specifically about the moss. So Moss and More, which is our project looking, Naomi and Naomi have been talking about, and for the moss and the science behind it and the peatland.
And that's the space where every month when we share stuff about moss, it's going to go into that section, isn't it? So if anyone wants to follow the project or get involved with the project, every month that's where the invitations to join in, the activity sheets, the stuff to do is there. And this, if you haven't gathered, I think everyone's probably gathered, this month's challenge is to make a badge and to share pictures of the badge.
Thank you, Chloe. So here, this is where we've been sharing some things about mosses themselves, some identifying of mosses, some bits about photography competition about mosses. So we've been putting a lot of the moss information here. And this is where, once you're inspired by moss and you've made a wonderful creation in whatever shape or form that might be, we're going to ask you to share them in here. So share a photo of your badge, share a photo of the creations that you make as time goes on. And then finally, we've got a Get Inspired section, and we're welcome to suggestions for extras here. So we've added a book club, which we've been chatting a bit on recently, energy knowledge. We've got a place to share jobs and funding if you know that there's a job in a relevant sector or a pot of funding that an organisation could claim. Yeah, a place to sort of share and chat, and whatever inspires you from the club, you can find a place in there to share it. And if you can't, let us know and we can add another section which fits with what you're thinking about. Hopefully that's enough detail.
Yeah. Jenny, that's great. And the more input, the better, isn't it? And the more members, the better. I mean, we've had a suggestion of having a day occasionally or even regularly where we say, right, next week on Friday, we're all going to get online and talk about poetry in relation to climate change, and we can all join in and do that. We could do that, or we could just carry on sharing our makes and ideas, and then sort of halfway through the year it might bubble up into a new project. Who knows where it's going to go, but at the moment it's a really interesting place to explore and develop your own creativity. And we were going to have one last question, weren't we, Chloe? We're going to say everybody has been sharing their own creativity and getting inspired by mosses and thinking about our energy systems and the reality of fuel poverty, but we thought perhaps the participants this evening could share one thing that they already did to make the future a brighter, greener place. Their own
That's
little,
right, yeah.
it can be because like mosses, if we're all a bit more like mosses, we do tiny actions, and together it makes a big difference. So if people sort of, as we're finishing off, could share something they're already doing, that would be brilliant.
I think so. One of the things that we've noticed and we're trying harder to do is to celebrate all of those small things that we do. It can be sometimes hard to you know, in the face of all of the difficulties that are to come in relation to climate emergency, it can be hard to focus on the good stuff. And so celebrating everything that people actually do and giving more attention to that, I think is a really good way of giving power to it. So I do really encourage everyone to share something small that they might have done recently in response, well, for a brighter, greener future. I wonder what you've done, Amy. What have you been doing?
Well, I was just typing in that I was just thinking, oh, what am I doing? I'm doing loads of little things really, but I was thinking I hardly ever use any paper in the office anymore. And there were days, you know, 5 years ago when I'd be printing off this and that and looking at it and worrying about stuff. And now I worry less and let it all hang out in the computer. She said, but you know, that's just a very tiny thing. But if you actually imagine that every day for 5 years, it might be 2 or 3 trees worth. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it could be.
What's somebody called Hannah? Oh yeah, our Hannah is, what's she doing? I explain the value of all right. Oh, you won't be power washing his drive. That's very nice. That's a good thing to keep your mosses. Yeah, I've got a piece of the sort of moss that grows on the concrete and power washers get rid of, and I think it does need to be observed and treasured. I know we mustn't. Yeah.
And maybe given a set of eyes to turn it into a little green hedgehog type thing. It looks like a little creature, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
A lovely moss. It looks like some lovely little animal.
Oh look, there's Katie's talking about her smart meter work, and then there's Bridget is going on a moss, fern and lichen walk. That sounds nice.
Oh, I want to go on that too, Bridget. That sounds great.
Yeah. So, you know, somebody's doing a lot more walking to keep warm. I must say, I did a bit of that at lunchtime today. I got absolutely freezing here, and I went out and walked around and burnt off or made myself warmer rather than turning the heating on. So yeah, that's lovely. And so has anyone got any last things they want to say? Because if not, we have fully launched the Bury the Giant Club, and here we go on our year ahead, creating and making and getting people to notice mosses and the mosaic of plants around mosses, creating a brighter world for everybody, hopefully. Okay, bye then. Thanks.
Very exciting. Thank you. Take care. Thank
for
you.
coming along and
Bye.
sharing it with us. And thank you, Nermio and Paul and Giovanna as well.
Thank you. It's been great.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Bye.